Hello, hello, one, two, three. Okay, I think my audio is working. We're just gonna. Hello, hello, one, two, three. Okay, I think my audio is working. We're just gonna. Sounds a bit quiet, but I don't know if that could just be my own settings. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's the Okay, I think my audio is working. We're just gonna. Sounds a bit quiet, but I don't know if that could just be my. Oh, it sounds like my own settings. I just be moving my mic, but it sounds like someone banging on the door. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's the Okay, I think my audio is working. Okay, well, I think this is fine for now. If someone doesn't like the audio, they can just be moving my mic, make their displeasure known, and I will try to fix it to the best of my ability. So today should be the last episode of our series where we take a look at the art and flavor of the Edge of Eternities set cards. So in case you don't know already, I'm just gonna do what's in the base art in the base set. I would love to go over the commander stuff, but I think realistically, I don't have time to, because I think if we go through all the commander cards and stuff and all the variants, we'd be here for like literally months, because I do not stream consistently enough to get that done quickly. If I streamed like one day a week, if I streamed like every day each week, it'd probably be fine. It'd be pretty feasible. But I don't, and I don't have time to, because I have school and stuff and a job. So we're just gonna have to go over the last of these land cards. Then we're gonna move on to other stuff. A lower one Eclipse isn't out yet, but there's some articles I want to read. The My Words White article, the My Words Blue. I can also read my own stuff that I have written in the past, but I feel like maybe focus on some of the stuff, more of the official stuff for now, and then after that I might do some of the stuff I've written about Color Pie and art analysis and stuff. Although how much I want to do of that is up in the air, because I already post videos. If you don't know, I post videos about with readings of my articles. So that could just be a video thing. That might just be a thing. Maybe I do videos where I read my own articles. We'll see. So let's hop right into this. We have Adagia, Windswept Bastion, Land Planet. I should probably. The artist is Adam Paquette. Adagia, Windswept Bastion, Land Planet. This land enters tapped. Add 1 white. Station. Tap on the creature you control. Put charge counters equal to its power on this planet. Station only as a sorcery. 3 generic, 1 white. Tap. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or enchantment you control. Except it's legendary, activate only as a sorcery. So one thing I also have a problem with is I have a problem with I have ADHD, so I start talking really, really fast, especially when I'm not reading stuff. If I'm talking just from the dome, I start speeding up, especially. And I actually honestly didn't really like how my last stream turned out, just because I felt like, especially near the end, I started rushing a little bit. I started talking so fast it's hard to hear what I'm saying. So if I start talking too fast, feel free to let me know. But I'm gonna try to talk slower. I've been trying to do that for like the last few streams. I'm just not good at it. So, please be patient. I'm doing my best. I'm not trying to disregard what the audience can hear or whatever. So Adagia is one of the planets that within the Sotheran system, the system we explore within the Edge. And I think it's a bastion. So the Sumist, specifically the Sunstar Palatinate, have a massive presence there. It's like a base there. It's basically their equivalent, like a Sotheran base there. I don't think I want to read all of these again, but how long are these? Oh, okay. They use a terrestrial world in their system. Off-world colonists have settled the calmer but windy regions of the world, where they have built low-lying, wind-powered, aerodynamic sculpted buildings designed to integrate Adagia's natural environment. Most notably, the Sunstar Free Company has settled on Adagia, where they quickly declared themselves administrators of the world, acting as the expeditionary arm of the Sunstar Palatinate. Should I just read the entire thing here? I don't know how many times I'm going to do that, but we'll just do it for one for each planet. Adagia is a terrestrial world in the Sothera system, and the main location for the Sunstar Free Company's operations. It is a world that is defined by its powerful and steady winds, which scour the surface of the world and sculpt its geography. The world's flora and fauna have evolved alongside this steady wind, shaping to graceful aerodynamic forms used to use the wind to their own benefit. Off-world colonists have settled the calmer but still windy regions of the world, where they have built low-lying, wind-powered, aerodynamically sculpted buildings designed to integrate with Adagia's natural environment. Most notably, the Sunstar Free Company has settled on Adagia, where they quickly declared themselves the administrators of the world, acting as the expeditionary arm of the Celestial Palatinate. The local population who settled on the world prior to the arrival of the Sunstar Free Company was affiliated with the Palatinate already. The Order's arrival merely formalized the existing relationship. The atmosphere on Digi is thin and cold. An air-breathing human can't survive without a rebreather or oxygen supply if they were to leave the safety of an environmentally sealed habitat, but risk both death from hypoxia, embolisms, and other consequences of oxygen deprivation. Nevertheless, efforts to make established settlements around Digia continue. The world is rich with fantastic natural life, as such is a prime target for various Palatinate pharmaceutical and agricultural companies. Adegia's natural creatures have evolved to accept this windy environment, favoring aerodynamic shapes, broad solar-friendly surfaces, tolerance for the mighty storms that often sweep the world. Sail-like wind skippers, Adegia arrows, sky minnows, and dart raptors are common sights around the colonial building on the surface. Larger creatures in the upper atmosphere. Yeah. So, that's what we know about Adegia. What? No, I don't know why I'm recording this. Sorry. It's gonna slow the fuck out of my computer. Make sure my audio is up. Hold on. To make sure I'm not muted again. So I think another thing to consider about Adegia is I think it also has a lot of mirrors. Both made, but also I think it's mentioned in one of the stories. Adegia has like a mirror thing going on. If you would. Michelangelo on the scene. Okay. Give a second. Acting funny. Okay. See, the problem is I don't remember where it was. But Adegia also has a mirror, as mentioned, it's having mirrors, both naturally occurring and man-made mirrors in one of the stories. Which I think is actually what this represents down here. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or enchantment you control, except it's legendary. Activate only as a sorcery. I think that's referencing the fact that Adegia is a mirror world and has a ton of mirrors. One's called a Dawa. So I think that's what the mechanically is referencing. Also, I guess the solar panels are probably big reflective surfaces. It has like these weird things up here. We don't really see like a lot of stuff represented. There's the white. It produces a white mana because it's mainly inhabited by a white aligned faction, and the planet's actually mostly connected to white mana. Which, if you actually pay attention to the way the planets are introduced, they are in Wooburg order. It's just that Adegia is the third planet. So if you start from the third planet, it goes white, blue, and you go back up to the first planet, black, red, green. So it's Wooburg order except if you started from black. So it's black, red, green, white, blue. Oh my god, I'm dying. Blue, which is the order that if you start, if you pull up the color pie, and start like reading from like in clockwise fashion, that's the way the colors show up. So here, so if you start like with white, or even this white, blue, black, red, green, and that's the order the planets are in. I assume it's station because the idea is that the planets having station here is just that there's a lot of people inhabiting them. So there's places where you can land and like put people there to like get resources and stuff. You could even interpret this as like station it, and then you get people who create mirrors and copies of stuff. And the artist is Adam Paquette, who I'm pretty sure we saw in the set previously. The land isn't legendary, which I know people talk about a lot. If you ask me, in a perfect world, flavor-wise, this land would be legendary. I think the logic so first of all, the reason is that legendary lands just proved to be mechanically problematic. I don't remember the exact reason, but I'm taking the designer's word for it that is the reason. Also, I not like I don't trust them, but like so basically it's problematic, right? I'd have to double check why it's problematic. They have explained it in the past. I just don't remember it. But basically, legendary lands are problematic mechanically in certain ways. So they try to avoid legendary lands. And you also the problem with legendary lands is that if you make it but too many legendary lands, then if you draw a land that's a legendary and you already have a copy of it on the battlefield, it's a dead card. So sometimes they get around this. Like for example, Kamigawa, they do have a cycle of legendary lands. It's just that you can cycle them to not cycle them. You can what's it? Well, I'm trying to remember what I'm talking about. How do you spell Ganjo? So see, these are legendary lands, but they kind of get around some of the problems that you can have with legendary lands as a design thing when you're designing Magic cards. Is one of the problems with legendary lands is that if you already have this land on the battlefield and you draw another legendary land, it's borderline useless. The most you can do is you can tap your legendary land for mana, and then play a card, then play the second legendary land, and then sacrifice the original legendary land, so that way you can you can still have like an extra mana to play that turn. But in a lot of cases, it's basically like effectively useless. You just have a land on the battlefield, and then the land in your hand you cannot play. So a way they get around this is sometimes for example, it'll be like, channel, and then it has an effect. So that way, even if you already have a Ganjo on the battlefield, you're not like, oh shit, she's in their Ganjo, this is useless. It's like, oh, okay, I can channel this. But in the case of the Edge, it seems like they're leaning away from the planets being legendary. I think the logic given was basically that these represent, even though this is like a zoomed out image of the planet, the idea is that it can represent just basically any part of the planet. So it's like Adagia Windswept Bastion, it represents any part of Adagia. So their logic is that like because it represents any part of Adagia as opposed to just the whole planet at all times, it's not legendary. In my opinion, it's a bit of a stretch, but I see it. It's decent enough. I think there is a world where maybe you could make a sci-fi like a space faring set that cares about legendary lands, but I also see why I also completely understand why they didn't in this set. So the idea is that in the same way that, like, for example, a plains isn't like representative of like an entire world, like Adagia here is not. The Windswept Bastion is representative of just a part of Adagia or any part of Adagia you could be on when you're drawing mana from it to power your spells and stuff. So I know that's not like going to be a satisfying answer for everyone, but that's just the answer that I'm aware of the reasoning they're given. So as far as the art goes, so I love how all the plants have like this like one thing that the art in the set does not let you forget is that the super void is a thing. It's in the background basically so many cards, and it's so well like done and like consistent, even like when it's like a heavily different style. So here we have, and also specifically with the legendary plants, it gets bigger the closer you are. So it's bigger here on Caveron because Caveron is the second planet from the Sotheran super void. So as you get closer and closer, and then here it's just bucking massive. So one thing you'll notice is that as you get closer with each of the planets, as you get like closer to the super void, the super void is actually getting bigger in the art. Of course, this planet uses like a lot of yellow and gold coloration, so it's a very windy planet, which is probably what these like dust colors are supposed to represent, like the wind kicking them up. Yellow and gold because white often has an association with the colors yellow and gold because you don't always want to just use like pure white to represent white alignment all the time because it can be hard to see in certain areas. And also I've talked about this a lot, but yellow and purple are complementary colors, which means they sit opposite from each other on the color wheel. So you can see this in actually a lot of designs. For example, the reason Mario and Luigi are red and green is because red and green, despite red and blue usually being thought of as opposites, red and green are actually opposite sides of each other on opposite sides of the color wheel. So they are complementary colors, which means they tend to go well together. And purple and yellow is kind of like a similar way, which you can actually see with the design of Wario and Waluigi. Because Wario and Waluigi actually mimic Mario in a lot of like very clever and subtle ways. And one of the ways is with the color scheme, because in the same way that Wario is mostly yellow with like purple as a secondary color, Waluigi is mostly purple with some yellow. With the idea being that purple and yellow are complementary colors in the same way that red and green are. Sorry if I say I just gotta think about what I'm saying. So here we do have like this sort of yellow, gold, and then like the purple of the super void. I'm not really sure that's exactly the so sometimes they use like the contrasting colors to represent like a conflict. Like even in the most basic like Magic the Gathering like color pie thing, red and blue are usually thought of as opposites. So usually represent the presence of those two colors can represent a conflict, which we actually do see. We did see in the last Tarkir set, like there were certain like there was like a what was it called? It was Dragonstorm. So there was like a cycle of like enemy color stuff that was so like Frostcliff Siege. This represents a conflict between the Jessica and the teamer, and both of these factions have blue red in their identity, but even despite that, the blue red here represents a conflict, and like green and blue are enemy colors. Despite the fact that both factions here have blue and green in their color alignment, the green blue in this case represents a conflict. So doesn't always represent that, but it can in a lot of cases. So yeah, you have both like the color wheel being referenced and the color pie. Also, of course, this could just be here just because it's this fucking super void, as I pointed out earlier, and it's always going to be there. So I'm sure that the reasoning is actually more simply that Adegi is the third planet from the super void, so the super void's going to be somewhat noticeable, and super voids usually depicted as purple, like purple. So, um, yeah, breeding pool. Breeding pool. Land. Oh, hold on. Let's talk about the art. So, I mean, the thing that all lands in Magic the Gathering. Oh my god, I'm dying. The thing that lands in general Magic the Gathering tend to have also is that there's not is the land itself is the main character, and by that what I mean is that you usually either don't see people or the people you do see are very small and just used for scale, and you don't have a good look at their face. So here we just have these ships, so there's no characters like kind of like take to, we can assume is like the main character, like these who's in the ships isn't important. We know that they're Palatine ships, but who is actually in them is not important. What's important is this giant like sweeping land, and also similar to the spaceships, the lands here are borderless, which could be meant to represent like the sheer size of the planet. But it could also just be to make it look more impressive because it's a sci-fi ship. It's a sci-fi set, so you got to show all your cool planets off, right? Also, of course, the planet curves because the planet's round, and then even these kind of like curve because they're going around the planet in some way. I do like how the light, like the sun, I guess not the sun, but the super void's hitting it in a way that makes it like glow in certain areas. So yeah. So breeding pool. So we have a cycle of the pain land the pain lands, and it's pretty interesting here because the each of these seem to refer to a moon, which implies that Sothera has moons, and also we know objectively that not only are there planets in the edge that we just don't see, but there are also planets within system that we are not privy to. Because I believe they mentioned there's other planets, um, part of the system. So we have breeding pool. As this land enters, you may pay 2 life. If you don't enter, it enters tapped. Log 1.4.778. Grenove is a tropical moon teeming with endemic biota. I must see for any aspiring astrobiologists. Maiaces, how do you pronounce that? Maiaces Edge Chronicles. So astrobiologists, we can pretty easily assume what the job entails. Astro means space or stars, having to do with that kind of stuff. And then biologists, someone who studies life. So someone who basically studies life in space. So our here is pretty interesting because we have what looks like the Ilvoy and the Eumedians fighting. So I guess that's where the green and blue comes from. Is like the blues like the Ilvoy and the Eumedians. Although this definitely is not on Evendo, so we know this is like on one of the moons because they say it's Greno by tropical moon. I don't know if we don't know what planet it orbits. It'd be cool if next time we visit the edge. I don't know if the next time we visit the edge will be focused on as much on Sothera, but I'd be interested to see if maybe we get some like moons to especially like a land type moon could be pretty cool. I know that in one of Mark Rosar's articles, he was talking about how they were thinking about making like different land types like star, black hole, moon. So I'd love to see them maybe come back to the idea of like a moon land type one day. Um as far as the art goes, once again, pretty simple. Like it's pretty zoomed out as far as the battle is concerned. So like the focus isn't like who is flying these ships per se, other than the fact that it's like these specific factions. It's like the environment itself is like the main focus. And I think it's a monoist. Wait, no, is that because these look like Ilvoy because they're kind of like green. But are those monoists back? I mean, not Ilvoy. These look kind of like Eumedians, but that looks like a monoist. Are they fighting monoists? Maybe they could be fighting monoists. Which would probably make more sense because the monoists are more like religious extremists. So a lot of the factions seem to have like a lot of beef with the Sunstar and the monoists, just because in the story it seems like they're just kind of like religious extremists who kind of bring their fighting and bloodshed everywhere. Because that's definitely a monoist ship. As far as the environment goes, once again, green. So an effect you notice sometimes here is that sometimes when artists paint backgrounds, it gets like more blue or tinted a certain color the farther away it is, and that mimics the real world in which the farther something away is, the more blue, and says have more of a blue tint. The reason for this is because there's more atmosphere between you and whatever you're looking at, and as you know, the sky's blue, right? Earth's atmosphere from a distance is blue. So the more atmosphere you put between yourself and something else, the more blue it can look if it's extremely far away. In this case, it's also being used to show because the card produces green and blue mana, so it's really amping up the idea that it's like green fauna, but also like blue turquoise water, then like blue background and a bit of a blue sky here. And once again, the Eovoy have like almost like filigree looking ships made of like cloud sculpted stuff. And it's pretty hard to see the ships over there. I assume those are monoists at this point. I thought they were Eumedians, but I think they're monoists, especially with that ship in the background. Also, I do like how this thing in the foreground, and one thing that I noticed, like when a lot of Magic cards, they do a good job separating the foreground from the background, from the middle ground. It's like the foreground's like in this kind of like dark shadow. The middle ground's like it's what you expect, and the background is like more like blue, has like a blue tint to it. Also, something I forgot to mention about Adagia is that Adagia has like a very wind theme, and white is a color that gets a lot of flyers. So, white isn't necessarily always connected to the element, isn't connected to the elements of wind, like the classical element, like fire, earth, air, water. It isn't connected to air in the same way that as much as blue is, as often as blue is, but it has a lot of flyers. So I think that connection is sometimes made. White tends to be associated with light specifically. And sometimes you get people asking like, where does white and black fit in with like the classical like fire, fire, earth, water, air thing. And the thing is, they don't always. They're not always. It's like I think usually it's like blue, red, and green sitting like in those like four classical elements, and then white and black is usually like light and shadow. Sometimes they dip into like like fire or whatever, but typically I think they're doing their own thing. A command bridge. This land interest tap. When this land interest, sacrifice it unless you tap an untapped permanent you controlled. Add 1 mana of any color. Constantine Marin. I forgot to read the artist for the last one. Also, I don't know if you know this, but I think they dropped someone dropped they dropped a video like about the history of Scryfall. Hold on. A friend sent it to me, so I'm looking for it. So I think it was loading ready run. So I use Scryfall so much I kind of got to give them a shout out. Also, I don't know if they have ads. Maybe turn off my ad blocker. I'll do that later, but so if you don't know, this is a video. The brief history of Scryfall, TTC episode 569. So if you wanna check that out, you can. I'm probably gonna put it in the description actually. We're just gonna pop that in there. Wait, what was the name again? Sorry, I completely loading ready run. So if you want to check that out, you can. So this art is by Constantine Marin. Constantine. Oh, they did a bird for some of the Final Fantasy sets. Anyway. So back to Command Bridge. It's a golden card because even though lands do not have colors in the traditional Magic sense, they're usually color coded for whatever color they can produce, and this can produce 1 mana of any color, so it gets like the same multicolor sort of treatment. I'm not really sure what like flavor wise what the land entering tap unless you control. Like I assume that generally the idea is that you play the land, and the idea is that you having a tap and untap permanent you control is you having to basically assign a creature to the Command Bridge to like man it. Like yes, you can untap any permanent, but I think the idea is that you play it. You can for example tap a creature, and then you have someone to command the Command Bridge. Although I think most of it's just probably do for mechanics because sci-fi command bridges it off as a common trope, but you don't want this land to be broken by having it produce like multicolored stuff by producing it one mana of any color without having any drawback. Um, so this looks like some sort of pinnacle thing. I assume it's the Eternity Station, the pinnacle and the Eternity Station, because it's similar colors. Yeah, I assume it's the Infinite Guideline Station. Which, in case you don't know, the Infinite Guideline Station, what it does is basically faster than light travel exists within this plane. It's called like weft travel or warp travel, but not every ship has the capacity to do it on their own. Most ships do not have a big enough engine or can't support that. So most what they have to do is they have to come to these stations and then basically have the ship dock the ship onto a ferry, which then that ferry weft travels with the ship docked onto it. The Pinnacle tries to say, I think, mostly neutral, but they also have they clearly have like this sort of like Star Trek Federation, sort of like we want to unite the universe, we want to bring the universe together, we care about peace sort of vibe to them. But they try not to fight, it seems, even though they do have some like Pinnacle kill ship or whatever. We have like Pinnacle kill ship, so they do have, and the characters like in universe when we read the story refer to the fact that do have like some sort of firepower or defense. Although it just might not all be at Sothera in the moment. So once again, with like a lot of lands, even though there's a lot of so this land has a lot of people, but once again, nobody really feels like the main character. Everyone feels kind of equally important mostly because we don't see their face. No one's like, the way the perspective is shot, no one's like really that like on like a super high like podium or anything. No one's like looking all at one person. Everyone's doing their own thing. So you definitely get the vibe that everyone's sort of equally important here in their own way. What's important is basically like the landscape here. The Pinnacle uses like a lot of blue and silver. I think it's just because like certain shades of blue and silver are just used to represent colorless things a lot of the time. And the Pinnacle seems like to have like not necessarily a colorless theme, but like play as many like different colors as you can. Like they care about multicolored stuff a lot. Which I hope we see more of in the future. We just didn't get like a ton of Pinnacle stuff. Or not as many Pinnacle cards as we could have, just because there's already a bunch of factions in the set. You already have the Ilvoy Combine, the Eumedians, the Cav, the Monoists, the Sumist, etc. So I wasn't expecting like the Pinnacle to get like a bunch of multicolored cards. And I know, even though it has like some like for example the Infinite Guideline Station cares about multicolored stuff. I didn't expect it to like be to be like a massive theme here in the set. So that looks like kind of caver on that down there. I don't know if this is supposed to be the Infinite Guideline Station for sure. This could just be a command bridge of some sort of ship, especially since we see other ships flying around. We know the Infinite Guideline Station can move, but I think it was close. I think it was closer to Ilvoy, I believe. If I remember correctly from the story, it was closer to Ilvoy. Although I'm kind of wondering what all this stuff is. Is this like space dust? What is this? I'm not 100% sure, but very nice piece of art. I do like all the glowing edges. Definitely screams like sci-fi, like the sleek sci-fi high tech depictions that are often used to represent it. It's definitely sleeker than like a lot of the Cav stuff, which is kind of like the point. Is the Cav are more strapped for resources. They're in a more dangerous environment, so a lot of the stuff is more utilitarian. But other factions like the Pinnacle tend to have like smoother shapes and like glowing edges and stuff. I think there's something beeping downstairs, but I don't know what it is. It's definitely not the smoke alarm. It's just like some door or something. Anyway. I wish I had more to say about this. I just can't really think of anything off the top of my head to. I do like the window. Like the window obviously helps bring the main focus. Like one of the things about the edge one of the things about the edge is they're trying to show like basically the vastness of the universe. So having this like sort of window poking out, showing us like how big the universe is, all this giant stuff happening, is a very interesting bit going on. Also, notice how everything's kind of like at an angle slightly. Like we could have easily been posted up, so we're down the center of this, and and everything's basically like symmetrical. But we're actually kind of at an angle where this like if you follow this path like off the card art, it's actually like going at an angle, which means we're looking at this from like an angle, which I think is just meant to add a bit more dynamicism, make it a little less boring than if we just like looked at it straight on. So that's new. Avendo Waking Haven. So once again, I'm probably just gonna go to the Planeswalker's Guide real quick. Evendo, twin second planet from Sothera. I think it's wait what? Okay, just checking. Evendo is an icebound terrestrial world that co-orbits Sothera almost exactly opposite to Caveron. So, if we don't know the Cav, their planet's dying, right? And some of them are just like we just have to like live in space or become spacefarers or whatever. But others are like we should just take Evendo. The only problem is Evendo has like these a species called Eumidians living there, and Eumidians aren't native to Sothera in the same way Evendo is. There's Eumidians all across the universe. They look very different, and how they spread using these seed ships that go across the universe, and they land on planets like Evendo. And then once that planet becomes habitable or reaches a certain state, they basically come out of these pods and start terraforming the planet. Um, so the fact that it's like a co-orbit Sothera, almost exactly opposite of Caveron, probably almost represents like the conflict where like some Caveronians they see basically the Eomedians as like so the Caverons are a protected species apparently. So which they're I'm not sure if they're endangered, but I guess the implication is that like because the planet's dying, they could be endangered, so they're protected by the pinnacle. But some of the Cav are like, you know, who's not protected, and you know, who's also not native, at least how they see who's not native to the Sotheran system. The Eomedians on Evendo. So the fact that that's almost exactly opposite to Caveron represents the sort of like conflict between them. I think, like they're sitting on opposing sides of something. Long regard to the great disappointment of the earlier Cav explorers to be a cold, dead world. Evendo, in truth, held a deep-seated secret, a long dormant, symbiotic Eomedian vanguard, waiting for the perfect conditions to begin the great work of terraformation. The previous century's cataclysmic deformation of Caveron had. Oh, sorry, I have to close this. Had collateral effects on Evendo, as chunks of Cav homeworld rained down on Evendo's glacial surface, turning and melting great swaths of ancient ice. So here you have another bit of like maybe like the Cav perspective, where it's like the only reason that Evendo's even habitable is because our planet's fucking dying. But yeah. So the world warmed and began to form a thin but stable atmosphere, spurring it to warm faster. Then sections of ice melted totally, becoming new lakes, rivers, and oceans. This warming triggered the first wave of Eomedians to awaken from their hibernation and emerge onto Evendo's surface to begin their work preparing the world to fit their ideal. So, ideal? I don't know. So, this also like helps shed a bit of light on the Cav perspective a little bit, where it's like the Cav, I guess, relatively recent and like not like literally like recent, like 5 years ago, but I mean, within the solar system's history, it seems like I guess the Cav would have been like their planet was already dying by the time the Eomedians show up. So the first time the Cav visited the planet, it was barren, but since their plants started dying, that's when the Eomedians showed up. Evendo has long since undergone decades of Eomedian directed terraformation, directed by Eomedian hive architects. Evendo is a world of vibrant life and harsh contrast, where Eomedians have carved out and live in hard-fought zones of terra symbiosis, pockets of lush Eomedian habitable enclaves surrounded by a steadily melting perimeter of glacial ice. Outside of the terra symbiotic enclaves, the ice and the titanic beams that live within it still rules Evendo. The largest swath of habitable land is Evendo's equatorial band, which has bloomed into a purely timber symbiotic biome of titanic atmospheric piercing forests interlaced with Eomedian hive cities. Kind of funny seeing like Hive City, because that immediately breaks like gives me 40K flashbacks. But I think Hive City is just the reference that the Eomedians are a hive. Now, to be clear, the Eomedians have hives, but they're not a hive mind. They each have individuality and like their own personal thoughts and desires and whatever. Despite being genetically engineered for certain tasks. This band shows what the rest of the world will become, is a terra symbiotic paradise for Eomedians and a strange but wondrous environment for all of their visitors. This successful terra symbiosis has not gone unnoticed by the Caveronic Empire, who are already designing invasion plans to take the world for their own, once the Eomedians have finished remaking it. The Cav believe strongly that this could be their Caveron tomorrow, despite some inkling among Evendo brood spaces of the Cav's design. Despite some inkling among Evendo brood spaces of the Cav's design, the terrestrial population is content in their work and not aware of the looming threat the Cav pose to the gentle world. So the average Eomedian is not aware that the Cav are planning to jump them. So Evendo is also the second planet from the Sotheran supervoid. Although Caveron was closer, I think, maybe on the. It looks bigger on Caveron, but maybe that's just because it's dying and they want to emphasize that. But it could also be because Evendo's bigger, maybe. Evendo Waking Haven. So Waking Haven is alluding to. Did I go over the names for the last one. So Event of Waking Haven is alluding to the fact that basically the planet's waking up because of the Terra symbiosis. So Windswept Bastion, I mean that's I don't really explain Andigi Windswept Bastion mostly because it's windswept because it's a really windy planet, and it's a bastion for the Sumis because the Celestial Palatinate set up shop there. So it is their bastion in the Sotheran system. Event of Waking Haven, the idea is that basically like this could become like a very habitable, lush world one day, and waking because it's being the E-Marines are waking up, and also things in the ice are coming out, and the planet's being terraformed so that it's habitable now. Land planet. This land interest tapped. Tap 1. Add green. Green. Tap. Add green for each creature you control. Adam Paquette. So this is pretty like just green abilities, like just caring about creatures. The only reason I can think of for why it would do this for Evendo, outside of just like we just need like a green thing for this green planet to do, is that it represents the terraformation process. So the more creatures awaken, the more creatures you have, the better your terraforming is going. So you get more mana, and more of it's like can be used for resources. So obviously it's a green card because it really emphasizes the green. Like the void still like just like has a smidge of purple and blue, but the planet's atmosphere is giving everything a green tint, and like all the stars nearby are green. So they really want to let you know it's not. I mean, the land breeze is green mana. Lands once again do not technically have a mana color the same way that spells do because they do not have like a cost or anything. But they color code them like in a similar way, just so you know that you want to play this in a green deck. You don't want to shove this into like a mono blue deck. It wouldn't really make any sense. So this is clearly ice, but it's set to green by the atmosphere once again. I think as you get farther away, like this is like more blue than here. So I guess the idea is that as you get farther away, it looks a little bit more bluish, turquoise-ish, which helps bring your attention, which helps draw your attention to this like massive green, lush growth. Here we have a ship, which I think once again, who we know the ship is E medium, but other than that, who it is isn't really important, and it also helps show like the planet for scale, like how massive this planet is. And there's also like little glowing key things here, which I think is supposed to just allude to the fact there's life on the planet, like intelligent life, like people building cities and stuff that could produce light like that. And once again, we do have like that effect where like as you get farther away, not only does it become less detailed, but the atmosphere starts to like tint it a little bit, a certain color, so it gets less detailed, becomes tinted, etc., etc. Also, I didn't realize how big this glacier was. Like, you have like down here, but then like this actually like is just like jutting up. So these glaciers are actually like fucking massive. They're like going into the atmosphere. Oh, did I skip Godless Shrine? Oh shit. No, I didn't. Okay. I just did that in the wrong order. What's after Godless Shrine? Did I delete something? Godless Shrine, Cavalron. Godless Shrine. Plains Swamp. As this land enters, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, and just tap. Log 1.7.618. I'm sure you can probably put like a timeline for like when these logs are being made based on like the numbers. I just don't feel like doing that right now. Star Shadow, a relic of culture lost to calamity. Its people were eradicated in a single day, but by what? Macy's Edge Chronicles. Rob Ray. I think there's some other allusions to like people being eradicated within the Sotheran system on other planets and stuff. The eradication could also just because any number of things, Eldrazi, whatever. So we have a mix of like a lot of purple and white here. So like purple, white, even like the super void is like some purple, but also like a bit of white. And I do like how everything like swirling around the super void, like it's like a window into this like sort of what's happening in space. So purple is sometimes used to represent black in Magic the Gathering because similar to how you don't just want to use like pure white to represent white all the time, you also don't want to use pure black because that doesn't always work or can be hard to work with. So purple and white here, which color codes it as a white and black card. There's also green, but this is like just more like swamp growth. I guess the idea it's a plain swamp, so I guess the idea is like it's a plains and a swamp. It's like there's like a bit of here's more swampy, but I guess the idea is like it's a swampy plains. And I haven't really talked about. I mean, plains are associated with white and swamps with black. So I do just love the style of this art by Rob Ray. Just it actually looks like there's a fight going on here between the Palatinate and the Monoist, which makes sense. It's a white-black card, so the Palatinate are white aligned, the Monoist are more black aligned. So they're fighting over like this white and black world moon. You could even think of it as maybe they're fighting like over the state of it, like whether it's gonna be more white aligned or more black aligned, or maybe it says something about both the factions, where it's like maybe it's like the idea that Palpatine's willing to do whatever it takes to get it done, and more of a black method, and the monoliths are more like might have things they will not cross, or might have like a certain like morality, which might make them add a bit of white to them potentially. Who knows? But I just love the art. Also, I love how I talk about the swirl, but clearly like things are also swirling into the super void. Like if you look closely, this stuff is getting sucked in by the super void. So it gives an impression. I guess this impression about how, in regards to how close this moon is to the super void, and also this helps like show like how big and like and overwhelming and powerful the super void is. Where like all these clouds are being, this space dust and stuff is being sucked into the super void. Has Rob Ray done? Rob Ray's done some art. Oh, Rob Ray's kind of recent, but holy shit! Well, wait, that art looks sick though. Anyway, I need Rob Ray to make more lands for me. Me specifically, not anybody else. Whenever a creature, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Caveron Memorial World. So let's read the Caveron one. I guess you could interpret also that the reason that Caveron made the Caveron card depicts it as like looking the super void looking kind of bigger, is you could also interpret as that the orbit of Caveron in Evendo, even though they mirror each other, they're not like exactly like circular. So they might have like, because even in real life, like most orbits are not perfectly circular. Like planets get closer and farther from the sun as they orbit them. So that could be part of it. So I guess the question is like, I don't know if they're on the exact same trajectory, or if they're just kind of just mirror each other, or they both get closer and farther from the super void, but they also like they're like, I guess the question is like, hold on. I think it'd be better if I just drew out instead of explaining it. If my thing loads. So I guess my question would be, is it like, if this is the super void, if this is the super void, do they orbit the does it orbit like this, where it's like kind of like that, where they mirror each other, so they're both the second planet from the sun, or is it like they're the exact same orbit, so like they both just orbit like on this path, for example? I don't know, but it's probably not really important. It's probably just me overthinking things. Caveron, twin second planet from Zothera. Caveron that is, and Caveron that before. Caveron and Caveron before. Cav homeworld is the Cav homeworld is Caveron. Once a verdant and resource-rich terrestrial world, it is now a ruined husk decaying away into space, picked over by scavengers, wildcat miners, and Imperial Memorial teams. Also, I forgot to mention Adigi has like a lot of greenery, because green is usually associated with like forest growing and stuff to represent like life growing and like the natural cycle and stuff. Imperial Memorial teams and treasure hunters. Cameron crumbled after centuries of capped industrial strip mining of the world for its rich moxite veins, weakened its integrity so much that it began to fall away into space, prompting the Imperial Cab to rapidly expand their space program to ensure the survival of their species. So, clearly, like each of the planets seem to be like mostly, or if not completely, aligned to one color. So one thing here is that there could be a bit of commentary like on the negative of red philosophy here. So it's important to understand that each color has their own strengths and weaknesses, like generally. So there's no like objectively correct color all the time, or objectively good guy color. But I think here we see an interesting critique where it's like maybe like they lean so hard into red, because red is all about freedom through action, right? Red is about if you should do what you want, and you should not try to fight your emotions or stifle your emotions, and instincts. So what you see here is potentially like red going wrong, where it's like, oh, I want money, I want to be rich, I want money, and then not thinking about the future, living too in the moment. Where a color like blue is like, you gotta think about the future, you gotta perfect everything. But colors like red is like, well, not everything's gonna be perfect, so just do what you want to do right now and follow your emotions. But here we see that where that can go too far. In the case where like, oh, they wanted to be rich, they wanted money, they like the wealth. it's like this desire for something they were just too short. They're just too short sighted. They just didn't think about the future enough. So they just kept getting Moxite because they kept getting richer and richer. So it's interesting. It's interesting that they explore this for like a red planet. The idea that maybe not enough thought into the future. Maybe everyone like too. I want this now. I'm gonna get it now without any enough thought for the future. Um, Eventually, the Cav were able to mitigate the crumbling of the world, buying them enough time to continue their spaceward migration and attempts to collect and preserve as much of their terrestrial history and culture as possible. So again, this could still be kind of a red thing. Usually this is like a blue or green thing because like philosophically they're more likely to lean into it. But red's also all about like seems to care a lot about art and magic a lot of the time because like the idea of using art to express emotion and stuff like that and desire. The Cav regard. Hold on, is there a notation in this? I had once thought Cav would intelligent creatures unique to Dominaria. This place echoes multiverse in strange ways. I see it everywhere I look now to make use of it. Anyway, um, the Cav regard Caveron as split into two hemispheres, Caveron before and Caveron that is. Caveron before is a tectonically mitigated wedge of Caveron, the last stable celestial remains of the planet that the Cav managed to stabilize with a ring of massive tectonic anchors. Great pillars plunge dozens of kilometers into Caveron's crust. Outside this anchor wall, Caveron crumbles away into space, trembling and heaving as gravity tears the world apart. Inside the wall, the Caveronic Empire collects the world's monuments, architectural wonders, great works of art, and eons of cultural treasures. There remains a large planetary population in Caveron before. The catastrophe that doomed Caveron began its cascading collapse in living memory. And they work of so that's kind of scary that like you could have been literally vibing in the Caveron, like the planet. There's people who would have been alive when the planet was whole and fine. And the work of evacuating a global population off-world into a free-floating space station is ongoing. The inner wall then has the appearance of an open-air, nation-sized museum, a memorial megalopolis, where open space is a premium and population of millions work to build and launch new stations, catalog and pack artifacts, and maintain the tectonic mitigation wall against the steady advance of catastrophe outside the barrier. Outside the wall, Caveron is a tumult, a cataclysmic landscape called Caveron that is. This land is less of a landscape and more of a churning gravitational storm of debris ranging from micro meteorite clouds to continental chunks. Rumors swirl of memorial vaults, hardened, self-contained storage facilities built in the earliest days of the catastrophe to store artifacts, treasures, monuments, and even culturally important locations that could not otherwise be brought to Caveron before. True or not, these rumors pull scavengers and hunters in from across the system. Catching these scavengers are Cav memorial teams who race to rescue their ancient treasure, Caveron. True or not, these rumors pull scavengers and hunters from across the system. Countering these scavengers are Cav memorial teams who race to rescue their ancient treasures. Caveron that is also a popular destination for wildcat teams to hunt deposits of moxite that might be too small for the large mining concerns. Though there are no mother lodes left, these leftovers can still be life-changing for smaller teams. Additionally, these teams often raid damaged or opened artifact bunkers where more teams have already evacuated the monuments to see if they can find anything worth salvaging. The more cutthroat scavengers even risk attacking memorial teams that they know are transporting goods. Caveron ultimately is doomed. The outermost ring of the tectonic mitigated wall, called Durano, or the Mordrain ring by the Cav, has already lost pylons to the crumbling world. The world does slow the brutal effects of gravitational warping. Though the wall does slow the brutal effects of gravitational warping and still shake the earth under Caveron before, it does not stop it. One way or another, this generation of Cav and all that follow will be exiled to the edge until a suitable replacement world can be found. Which I guess for some is going to be Avenda if they decide to lean into that. So once again, I talked about this before, but Caveron clearly has like a big fire and earth theme because there's not a lot of like lush, like forests or anything. It's all rocky and like lava and fire. And these are things that both red sometimes leads into is the idea of earth and fire. This is because in classical elemental thinking, as in like Greek or Western or alchemical thought, there's like the four classical elements, right? Water, air, earth, and fire. Earth and fire tend to be associated with Earth and fire just getting mucusy. Oh my god. Earth and fire just tend to be associated with like things like lower base, more base things, as in like the body or emotion, which is something that Red's more likely to lead into, like the idea of embracing bodily feeling and emotion and acting on those, as opposed to trying to control them or rein them in or reject them, like a color like blue or white might. Um, it starts also by Adam Paquette. Cavern Memorial World. So it's a memorial world because it's a dying world, and the Cav are trying to get all like the memorial stuff together to save it as much as they can. Land Planet. This land enters tab. Add one red. Station. One generic, one red. Tap. Sacrifice a land. Create 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Then creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until the end of the turn. That probably represents them harvesting, like, either finding like a cache of stuff to like use, or memorial stuff to use, or them getting resources from Caveron. Either sacrificing one of the floating bits to get a resource, and then make a robot out of that, or some sort of technology. And then the boost, I don't know. I assume that's just mostly there for mechanics. I mean, I guess maybe it represents like a Wildcat team, or the memorial team's like moving in as fast as possible to grab what they can. But it's probably just mostly there for mechanics, I imagine. Once again, it's a card that produces red mana, so there's a lot of orange and red, even though the stars like red here, but you can still see the Sultana Super Void. And here the Super Void, where it looks, it always looks kind of menacing depending on like your perspective, but here it looks kind of extra menacing because you have this planet being ripped apart, and then you have the Super Void that might also be sucking bits of the planet in, which is probably not helping. So yeah, so tons of red. Open frame once again to represent, I guess, how big the planet is. That kind of stuff. Did I open that twice? Whoops. Sacred Foundry. So once again, there's another fight going on. Is this like between? It'd make the most sense if each fight going on the moon was like between the two factions that align with the colors. But this looks like it could be monoists, but I could also see it being like, hold on. It looks like kind of like monoists, I guess. They're kind of like, I swear some of these look green, but I don't know if that's just because they're, because like in theory it makes the most sense that even if in theory to me it makes the most sense that even if this is like a mono ship, that it's like a blue and green battle between like the Ilvoy and the Eomidians, but I can't say. It might just be a battle between the Ilvoy and the monoist. Whoops, there's a bird. Anyway. Sacred Foundry. Land, mountain, plains. As this land enters, you may pay 2 life. If you don't enter, just tap. Log 2.2.119. Kiln. So it's based on, the name is based on like literally what I think a kiln, I suppose, which is like an object you use to put like molten metal in. A furnace or oven for burning. Oh, I guess I think I'm the wrong thing. It's a pottery thing. A furnace or oven for burning, baking, or drying, especially one for calcining lime or firing pottery. So I assume that's where the moon gets its name from. It's a kiln. To burn, bake, or dry in a kiln. Kiln, known for its blazing forges and ancient lava steeps. Kiln, known for its ancient forges and for its blazing forges and ancient lava steeps. The footing may be treacherous, but the metallurgy is grand. Macy's Edge Chronicles. So, a foundry, I assume, is like where. Hold on, I'm just gonna double check what a foundry is. A workshop or factory for casting metal. So it makes sense. Sacred Foundry. This is a moon where you make you make metal. I see like there's a fight going on here, which I guess makes sense. They're fighting over the foundry. So molten metal is kind of interesting in this case because one thing we've been seeing red and white summons get is like caring about equipment, but also caring about like forging stuff. I think that kind of represents. So in the case of red, there's like the red's connection to heat, but I think usually the reason red's connected to like forging and stuff is metaphorically like how blacksmithing can be like an art, which can be used to express your emotion. And the idea is that white cares about helping people, so it helps them like equip stuff. So I guess that's like the overlap there is like red using like blacksmithing as like an art, and then white using like stuff built by forging to equip people and better bolster their forces to help people and make the world a better place. Not that this cares about equipment specifically. And this art is by Titus Lunter. So we have a lot of orange because I guess we have a lot of orange because red, but also like some gold, and like there's a lot of orange because I guess like it's like red and white. So like a color that could be somewhere between them would be like orange/yellow. Like if you apply white to red, you get orange. And if you apply even more white to red, you eventually just get brighter orange, I think. But anyway, I'm thinking about this too hard. I'm doing painting in class. I'm really thinking about like color mixing lately. But yes, like if you mix red and white, obviously you get orange. So that's why there's a bunch of orange all over this art. And you see a bit of red here. And once again, the specific people in these ships doesn't really matter outside of just like the general faction. There's like red and orange in the sky, blah blah blah, and the landscape is like the most important. I don't really know who's fighting here. I want to assume Cav and Palatinate because we've seen them fight within the story itself, but I'm not 100% sure. It could be like Monoliths or something. Oh, I don't think it's Monoliths. Monoliths have very weird looking ships that are like very easy to. I want to say it's Palatinate and Cav, but I don't know. It's hard for me to tell. They're very far. We're very far away in this painting. You think this guy like never gets like a break ever since Space Marine like 2 came out? Like, oh, you're Titus, bro, Titus, and it's like, yeah, like the Space Marine guys. Oh, this guy's been like working on Magic the Gathering for like a while. Anyway, Secluded Starforge. Land, tap, add one colorless. Tap X and tapped artifacts you control. Target creature gets +X/+0 until the end of the turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Create 2/2 robot artifact creature token. The Heat of the Sun condenses into a forge. Chris Ron. So I guess it's not a forge that makes stars, but it's a store forge powered by a star, which explains why it makes like robots and untaps artifacts. Um, is that the idea that you're forging them anew, you're giving them like new stuff to use, and you're creating robots, which makes more sense. And it also supplies energy, I suppose, so you can tap it for one colorless. Art by Chris Ron. So this kind of looks like Cav, but the way it's done is like beautiful, where it's like these we're like behind Cav, and then like on either side is like all these rocks coming out, and they're all like unnaturally like um parallel to each other, but in a way that I think that adds to the piece, makes it very interesting. Um, and I guess that's where the star maybe is being used to forge something. I'm not 100% sure. And these look like kind of like miniature versions of the Super Void a little bit, but not quite the same. So I don't think these are like miniature Super Voids or anything. And I mean everything in this painting kind of bring you to like this general area because like all the rocks are pointing here, and then there's like this giant orange heat here, along with like all this like equipment and stuff, and this bright light, which helps bring your focus to like this general area to the center. Because like this thing is within like the bounds of like this planet, so like I feel like a lot of attention is brought over to like, this general area. And interestingly again, um, they could have made the so for far away planets it makes sense that the land is curved because that's how planets work their round. So the farther away you are, the more curved they look in certain ways. But here they could have easily made like this like land flat, but they made it like tilted, which I don't. So this could be because like literally this could be like on one of these like little rocks, and thus the rock might not be completely stable or might not be completely flat. But it could also make the piece more dynamic and less boring than if you just like made everything like perfectly flat and stable and gives like a sense of instability to it. Also, very interesting as that very interesting as that's by what I assume is Cav. Because once again, red and forging is like not an uncommon connection Magic makes, but obviously this is colorless, so I mean take that with a grain of salt, right? Stomping ground. Stomping ground. Land, mountain, forest. As this land enters, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tap. Log 2.5.325. A newborn moon. A quad still churns with fire, the fires of creation. I'm eager to see what it will become. Macy's Edge Chronicles. I hope we get Macy's like a card one day because I think it'd be really fun if she just cared about like different types of lands or something. So see here, it's like Palatinate. Well, actually, it's actually Cav and E Midians, I think, because Palatinate it's kind of yellow. But Palatinate like has like more gold and like weird orbs floating around. So here it's like it makes sense because it's red and green. So it's like the green Emedians fighting the red Cav. Art is Bruce Brenice. And here we have like so it's a newly formed moon. It's exploding upwards. Um, I mean, Stomping Ground. So I guess Stomping Ground because it's new, so like they're trying to take it over. And obviously, you have your forest down here, and then this is like it's like a mountain forming. This is like a mountain being literally formed as they fight. So that's where the mountain land tip I think comes from. And this ship is shot down. But once again, the focus is like zoomed out to focus on the battle in general mostly, and the land itself as opposed to like any one specific ship as being the most important. Also, once again, fire along with red associated with like fire and lava, and orange, and um green with like forests and stuff. Because forests are one of the like, first things people think of when they think of like the natural world, and the idea of like embracing like the world unchanged. Like if you leave things as they are, like things like trees and stuff will grow. So forest is like a metaphor for like the natural world, sort of, and like letting things just grow naturally. Altar. So, Susur Secundi, first planet from Sothera, once called Anuki. So, Susur Secundi, if you don't know, the name is Secundi. So there is another planet somewhere else called Susur, which is I think where the Monos were founded, but it's not in the system. It's some other system. Susur Secundi is the terrestrial world closest to Sothera. It is a dark, eerie world crisscrossed by labyrinths and monumental rock formations that appear shaped by some long dead civilization. Too many straight lines to be natural. The world is bare, dark stone with a thin atmosphere that leaves its surface largely open to the ravages of the edge. The Cav knew the world as a Nuki and had previously targeted it for exploration during the first days into the edge centuries ago. They found it thick with common materials and not worth exploiting. After Pinnacle opened the Sothera system to the rest of the edge, the Monos came to Anuki, drawn at first by its proximity to Sothera. Upon surveying the world and discovering its labyrinths, monumental columns, and gravitational tides that conforms to existing hymn and scripture, they were elated and moved to claim the planet for themselves. The Cav did not contest their claim. I don't blame the Cav because this shit looks like kind of very scary. Maybe I can see why they choose a Vendo over whatever and Cav over whatever this is going on here. Um, It has been decades since the Monos settled in Nuki and renamed it Susur Secundi after the capital of their order, the great monastery at the lip of Susur. This is intended to be a great honor and signify the import of the potential Sothera supervoid. Upon the completion of the project, Sothera will become the 1000th supervoid claimed by the Monoists since the founding of their order. It is only fitting that the world nearest the dying star carry a diminutive honorific, have a monastery constructed throughout its great subterranean chambers, and become the main staging ground for Monoists in the Sothera system to advance their project. Susur Secundi's surface is barren for craters, ejecta, ruined labyrinths, and veins of high albedo materials. Um, what's a high albedo material? I mean, I know albedo can mean like it's like a color. I think reflects more sunlight than the surface with low albedo. Okay, so high albedo means it reflects a lot of sunlight. Monitoring stations, observation blisters, and flight command towers dot the surface of Susur Secundi. The dozens present in each hemisphere to give the Monos a clear and redundant view of the surface world and Sothera above. The main trick of the Monoist population in Sothera lives underground, through newly excavated subterranean tunnels and in convert and expanded tunnels dug by the first Cav missions to the world. Though there are vast underground labyrinths and structures below Susur Secundi's surface, the Monos do not live in them. These cavities are instead regarded as holy sites, evidence of the immortal follower's design, and are often reserved for study and used as a place of worship and contemplation. Few non-Monos are allowed to land on Susur Secundi, although many neutral ground stations orbit the world. Water ice dealerships, various neutral party monitoring comm stations, quarantine stations, and so on. So, obviously black because it's closest to the black hole, which so their super void itself is seems to be connected to black mana, and this planet is also mostly connected to black mana. Also, the Monoists live there. The Monos are created the super void, which could also be why it's connected to black mana. Void altar makes sense. So void is like the Monos worship like black holes and everything and like a singularity, like everything being returned to one point. So like a void, like nothing, as in like a black hole, nothingness. An altar because it is the religious site of the Monoists. Land, planet. This land enters tap to add one black. Station, one generic, one black. Tap. Pay 2 life, sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power. Activate only as a sorcery. So if you don't know, sometimes the monos throw people into the super voids. They believe in like a sort of afterlife, so they believe that if you die into a black hole or a super void, you get pulled to the next eternity, the next universe or whatever, as opposed to just dying. So I guess the idea here is like in the same way that Aphrodite's sister was thrown into the super void, you can sacrifice a creature and then throw it into the super void to draw a card equal to the sacrifice creature's power. Station because there's monos here, I think, and ours is Adam Paquette. And obviously, since this is the closest planet, it is like the super void looks the biggest here, and there's a bunch. They're really amping up like the purple. Interesting. Obviously, as with the super void, as it get closer, it gets like more white, but you're obviously amping up the purple because purple is the black card. Borderless is the planet card. I will say that the planet sounds like relatively stable in the Planeswalkers guide. Like, it doesn't seem like it's constantly dying, but this looks like a very precarious position. And I'm pretty sure if your planet's doing this, you're fucked. Although to be fair, I assume there's like a kind of like a weird point where like if a planet can be like close enough to black hole without falling in, it just kind of like bends the planet a little bit, and maybe bits of it fall into it sometimes, but it doesn't always just like immediately just fall in. I don't really know, but can't blame the cat for looking at this going like, yeah, we're not sitting on this because this shit's gonna fall in any second. And once again, we just behold the power of the Sotheran Super Void with like stuff being wrapped in. How much art did Adam Paquette do for this? Because Adam Paquette worked on the set a lot. Oh, they did the art for man, they're killing with the fucking lands. Adam Paquette, holy shit, bro. Uthros Titanic God Core. So we'll read about Uthros. This is the last planet we have to go over. The last main planet we have to go over, right? Uthros, fourth planet from Sothera. Uthros is a titanic gas giant ringed by dozens of moons. Uthros is the first planet to be encountered by vessels departing the system and the last stop for those heading into the interior. Owing to its gatehouse position in the Sothera system, its upper atmosphere is crowded with bauxite refineries, supply stations, and vast ship-breaking salvage yards. Uthros is a common stopover for ships to refuel, resupply, and trade. In these area heights, Uthros' environment is an azure cloudscape home to strata whales. You gotta have your space whales, I guess, or sky whales in this case. They do also have space whales in the set, but living anvil rays, triple reefs, and other huge creatures that drift on sacks of gas and flagella, suspended above and swimming through different layers of Uthros' atmosphere. The depths of Uthros are a sharp contrast to the gas giant's sapphire blue upper atmosphere. Below the paradise of sun clouds and mighty storms lurks a caustic, brutal high-pressure environment, where diamonds fall like rain over continents of super-compressed gas and hyperdense horrors stalk the remains of discarded space hulks. Rivers of liquid metallic hydrogen and helium carve valleys through glittering methane and ammonia ice, revealing hollow cannula bored by great worms and other beasts. Here in this deep blue hell, the Earthless Combine is building a research complex into new atmosphere engineering techniques. So a lot of this is actually based on like I think how actual like gas giants form, where it's like stuff becomes so compressed, like even like gases become compressed into liquids and solids and all kinds of weird stuff. So also whoever's writing this is like what's cooking. Like the writing in the Planeswalkers guide is amazing. So one thing we notice is that Uthros has like a lot of clouds and like a lot of stuff live in the sky. I mentioned earlier with Adegia that blue has a strong connection to like the air and wind because like in classical elements like wind is associated with like higher things like mind and thought, and like the soul, which blue is all about. The idea of like putting your thought and reasoning above like emotions and stuff. And blue just gets a lot of flyers. And here are the super void. The super void is the smallest because this planet is the farthest away from it. So Uthros is a Titanic God Core. So I assume it's Titanic because it's a massive planet. But I think God Core represents whatever secret experiments going on inside near Uthros' core. I can't talk today. Within, I think God Core references the whatever experiments are going on near Uthros' core. This land enters tap. Add a blue station, tap another creature you control. I assume that the reason they enter tap isn't like any flavor reason, it's just mechanical. Because if you could tap this and immediately station it with something big, you have like weird shit happen. Like I play this and then I station it, and then the station requires you to tap something else, so I don't need to tap this, and then I immediately add like 15 blue and then do something insane. So I think it's just that's just a balance thing. So if you play this like late in the game, you still have to like wait a moment to use it. Blue tap, add 1 blue for each artifact you control. So I think that's just a reference to the Ilvoy. And the Ilvoy, one, their experiments, but two, the Ilvoy use like a lot of like, ships and stuff like everybody else. They have a lot of like technology machines. So I think it represents like the presence of the Ilvoy and the idea of like this planet having a lot of machines and technology on it. Adam Paquette is the artist. So once again, a lot of there's like white, but like a lot of blue going on because of the blue card. I want to let you know it's a blue card. I do like how there's a ring of like clouds around it. The storms are very weird to make because like the way they kind of spiral off. I guess it just could just all be like within the planet's atmosphere. The atmosphere might just be weird, but it could also be because we know that the Ilvoy are cloud sculptors. So these could also be like kind of like evidence of like sculpted structures somewhere, or maybe the structures are just in the clouds. It's hard to say. Watery Grave. Watery Grave, classic card. So here's the Ilvoy and the Monolith fighting. So I have to assume that the breeding pool one is probably Ilvoy and Eumedion because it makes the most like color flavor sense of what they're going for in each of the cards. It could also just be an accident. Anyway, so the Monoliths are mainly black, Ilvoy are blue mostly. So here we have like they're all fighting over like a blue-black moon. I do like how these are like some treacherous waters. I do love this. I would love to see like them just going in on the planets, like planets matter one day. But as this land enters, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters on tap. Log 2.9.089. Lamuet, the cemetery moon of salvage and secrets, could be profitable for those brave enough to plumb its recesses. Macy's Edge Chronicles. Sergei Lushikov. So, like I said earlier, blue has a strong connection to water, but here is also like there's clearly like a lot of like shadow, like there's a lot of dark colors like going on. So I guess like the idea is like black section like shadow and darkness, and like the idea of like the hidden depths, what's down here, like with all these broken ships here, what could be so. And blue and black both have like this like emphasis on secrets, because blue's all about knowledge, and like blue's like, hey, if knowledge is so powerful, if knowledge lets you do all these things, then the best way to fight someone is to deprive them of knowledge. So because of that, blue despite being such a knowledge-focused color, seems that also has a strong connection to like secrets, because it cares so much about knowledge. And black is like, if I lie to you, then you don't know what I'm going to do, then that's great. That's an advantage. So together with blue and black, sometimes you have this massive emphasis on like secrets and hidden things. And you can see that especially with like factions like the Dimir, where it's like the Dimir are all about hiding stuff, lying, messing with misinformation, etc., etc. So these are Monoliths. These are Ilvoy. This moon is Lamuet. I hope Lamuet gets its own card one day. I mean, like its own like specifically like land type moon kind of thing, not like, because like the Watery Grave could be like could basically be anywhere if you really wanted it to be. It's just that it's representing Lamuet in this case, but I do like how jagged these look, how jagged these like this rubble looks, like to really emphasize how treacherous it is, and it's mostly just like blue and like black, but like a little bit purple to like really emphasize that it's a blue-black card. So yeah, and then once again we have ships for like both the size reference, but also like to show the conflict and the different factions at play. I'm not sure this is true for all the cards, but I noticed that it's interesting that the monos are like on the blue side, like the cards split in half, right? Here's the blue side, here's the black side. When you like read the text and stuff, it's like blue and black on this side, but the monos on the black side and the Ilvoy the monos on the blue side and the Ilvoy on the black side. So I don't know, I wasn't paying attention for that for all the other cards, but no, I guess they don't all. I think it's just a coincidence for some of them. I mean, Paladin, Monoliths. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm reading too much into it, but it would be interesting if true. So here we have what are these called? I've heard of these types of lands, but like the full art lands. It's very weird. It's very surreal for me getting these lands like in an actual Magic set that isn't just an unset. But Plains. I assume this is somewhere on Adagia because we've seen art of Adagia and has like these, and some of the plants are like some weird like blob things. I don't know if the idea is that this is some way to take advantage of the wind or the light or whatever. But so we have a Palatinate ship, and this is definitely a Adagia because we can see like the little solar panel mirror things or whatever in the background. I do love like the look of like these buildings, like they're built to like when wind they're built to be like aerodynamic in a way, which usually doesn't always make sense to do that for building all the time, but it's just interesting because we know Adagia has strong winds. Here we have a Palatinate ship because the planets are like run by the Palatinate. Beautiful sky. I do love like how this cloud's going up and it's at the same time like the ship's going up, so it's almost like they're kind of like mirroring each other in a way. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna have a ton to say about like these last cards. They're just gorgeous, man. But I mean, I could talk about why I think white gets played sometimes. Hold on. So I've written a bit about the colors. I gotta reorganize these because like the pictures I posted is like when I was editing them, they weren't. I was editing them in a different format, so I didn't really notice that the pictures would fuck up the spacing between the words. But for right now, it doesn't really matter because we're going to focus on land types. Land types, probably the second most iconic thing about to each color, behind the mana symbols, is their land types. And I would argue that every basic land actually has some interesting symbolism for each color. One association with associated basic land is the famous plane card. Plains. Not a plane card, a plains card. Which I think is the only card that actually has like that says plains and not like plane. I assume they just do that just for like clarity because there could be a card that's like a plane, but because like it's not called like blue doesn't get islands, it gets an island. Anyway, I think the choice of planes for white is interesting because I think the choice for white is interesting because I think it sort of ties in with white's themes of truth and honesty. One thing that has been mentioned is that the now unused keyword. One thing that has been mentioned is that the now unused keyword planeswalk, which was a keyword that made a creature unblockable if the opponent it was attacking control the planes, rarely showed up. Like there are literally only 4 cards with planeswalk in existence. We actually have been given a flavor reason for this. Planes are typically wide open and relatively flat areas, so there isn't usually a good place to hide or sneak up on someone in planes. I would argue this actually hints at the part of what planes symbolize for white, because as mentioned earlier, white actually usually dislikes lying because lies can be used to hurt others or the group under the guise of seemingly doing the right thing or helping. So planes in this case basically play up that aspect. The wide open areas of planes also mean that they also I know like some of the punctuation is bad. This is like a really old article. I'll go back and like up to the punctuation probably. Um, the wide open areas of planes also means that when they are bathed in light, there will usually be very few shadows, unlike all the shadows and darkness that may appear in, say, a dingy swamp. This further ties in with White's themes of light, truth, and honesty. This connection is also something further reinforced by the fact that almost all MTG artwork featuring planes are usually depicting planes at some point during point in the day, as opposed to the night. So it's something that also connects to White's sun imagery. Mark Rosewater also states in his Drive to Work episode 943, Basic Lands, that when Richard Garfield was designing the lands he wanted the white land to be somewhere that was easiest to live and would usually be most appealing for communities to set up and live at. This sort of tells us that an aspect of White's plains is that they usually look welcoming and easy to live/settle on. This makes sense since building a house on a flat surface is probably easier than building it on like a mountain or a muddy swamp. It is also less likely to have dangerous land formations or have something dangerous like landslides occur. On top of that, due to the aforementioned wide and open areas, it would at least be harder for predators or enemies to sneak up on you. All these aspects of plains also tie in with White's themes of peace and stability. Due to plains, since it is less likely for an environment to, dude, what the fuck are my commas? Since it is less likely for the environment to hurt you, unless there's a tornado or something, and it's harder for other people or creatures to hurt you without your knowledge. Some of the precursor ideas for White's basic land include things like farmland, countryside, pasture, and prairie. We all know that lands like farmlands were dropped because Richard wanted lands that didn't necessarily require things like cities, buildings, artifice, and civilizations to exist. Having the lands be something that could be natural formations and or have civilizations on them meant that they could be put in basically any plane or setting without sticking out like a sore thumb. Also, plains are notably the only basic land type that is pluralized, and we are actually given a reason for this in the aforementioned podcast. The simplest answer is that it can potentially be really confusing because yeah. So this is like one of the first articles I wrote. I got to go back, and it can potentially be really confusing because you have planes like the type of land, and words like plain are also commonly used to refer to something. Okay, so the simplest answer is because it could potentially be really confusing. This is because you have planes like the type of land, but you also have words like plain, which are commonly used to refer to something simple, straightforward, unremarkable, etc. So by having planes, you're referring specifically to the plural version of the type of land as opposed to anything else. This also means creatures referring to the land type, such as plains beast, wouldn't sound like plain beast as in a simple beast. This is something that the other land types don't really have to deal with, since while I'm sure some smart aleck is probably typing that technically an island could refer to a detached portion of a tissue or group of cells, such definitions aren't as common for other land types. Whether the basic red card says mountain or mountains ends up not really mattering, since it is unlikely that there will be much confusion, because when most people think mountains, when most people think mountain, they will assume that you are talking about the landmass. Mark also assumes that plains sounded better by ear to Richard Garfield. So that was what I wrote about plains in Magic the Gathering. Island. So this is clearly within the Uthros. We're clearly like looking in from Uthros. And interesting that we're looking up here. I guess with all the art we're kind of looking up a little bit, but interesting that we're looking up here. Once again, all the blue, all the clouds, all the air. Here we have like an Ilvoid facility. I think I've written about islands too, so let's go. I'm just gonna pull out what I've written about islands. Good moment. Did I already have it open? Whoops. This brings us to the land type that is associated with blue, the island. Honestly, the explanation here is pretty straightforward. Blue is associated with water for the reasons mentioned in the Elements of Metaphorical Association section. Islands are a type of land that is literally defined by water. In order to be considered an island, a landmass must be surrounded on all sides by water. To quote the dictionary, an island is a piece of land surrounded by water. The only thing I find weird about some of Magic's land types is that the islands and mountains are more like landmasses and plains, swamps, and forests tend to be more specific biomes. Since you could have, say, a swamp or mountain on an island. But I'm not an expert on these sort of things, and I guess you could have a small island and a swamp, to be fair. So maybe one of you could explain to me all the wide variety of swamps, or how they actually are a type of landmass in the comments below. I figured I might as well bring it up. If the reason islands are picked is because they're associated with water, then why isn't an ocean, lake, or river picked? Those definitely scream water. Way louder than an island, since they literally are just water. In Mario's Drive to Work, Basic Lands, he goes over how each land type is picked for each color. For some of the colors, such as blue, in order to get the full picture, we have to go all the way back to before Magic even existed. Originally, Richard Garfield was making a game called 5 Magics, with each magic being represented by a color that would later become one of MTG's 5 color philosophies. It is important to mention that 5 Magics wasn't a card game, but a resource game more akin to, say, Catan or something. These lands would eventually be adopted for Magic as an explanation for where the players get their mana from when casting spells. Blue's land originally started off as coast because of the fact that as a connection to water, and at the time, Richard wanted each land to be something that could be connected to each other due to the fact that 5 Magics was a tile-based game. But as the game moved away from being tile-based and towards being card-based, Richard had a lot less restrictions on the kinds of lands he could pick. Richard actually considered using something like a ocean as Blue's land, but ultimately decided that it needed to be some sort of land that was tied to water. So by land, I mean like he basically decided it has to be like something with like a physical thing that you can actually like sit on, with like a physical structure, which led to island being picked. Part of the reason the land was chosen was to add a sense of cohesiveness or balance. So since it would be weird if Blue had the only basic land that wasn't a land. Also, if you included an ocean as a basic land type, it makes the name basic lands kind of weird. While probably not intentional, it's important to mention that islands are a lot easier to fit into various places, worlds, and locations than entire oceans. Islands can be in any sufficiently large body of water, such as lakes, rivers, oceans, etc. They can also be you can even have like small artificial islands or in artificial bodies of water. You can also have islands of varying sizes, such as really small ones or really big ones. Oceans all kind of have to be massive. Oh, I will make this a video one day. I just gotta. I'm gonna have to go back and edit some of my wording. I think. Also, post ridic dastardly. So I haven't finished Black. I've been writing Black, but I've also been writing some like it's been going slow going because I've been writing also like I've just been writing like stuff about the Magnus archives and stuff at the same time, and also currently my main focus is Hunter x Hunter. I will go back and like finish the Black article and go through every color and color combination, but I haven't written my why Black has swamps yet. Off the top of my head, I've had to take a guess. It's because swamps. It's the association people have with swamps of being like dingy and scary and dark. Not which is not how swamps usually are always actually are, but it's like that. It's the association. It's kind of like the same reason that black gets like rats. It's not that rats themselves are I think are always black aligned or rats are like always selfish in that way, but it's the fact that rats have like this common association and their common phobia or fear that black can lean into to get what it wants. So I think a swamp is like a similar in that regard, where it's like this common fear or aversion to swamps that can be used to keep people away or use it to your advantage. Once again, Adam Paquette, this is clearly Susur Secundi, and we have like these rocks, these interesting like rock formations that look like they were carved. Um, and a mono ship. Of course, black and purple everywhere, like dark grays, blacks, purple. So you know what you look. So you know it's a card that creates black mana. Mountain. So I once again I haven't gone past black for my like article for my color pie articles. Um, black. So I mean so red it usually gets mountains because red has a connection to earth and rock, and mountains tend to be rocky and earthy. And the idea of like earth and rock connected to like more base emotion, like the body, most more basic things like basic as in like not as like high like on the totem, but like basic as in like the body and emotions. And specifically, too, mountains can also be like volcanoes and stuff. So there's also that connection to fire, and we see them really playing with that here with like the rock and fire on Caveron. That is as the cav ship flies by for for a sense of scale, but also like this is a very kind of like interesting card because I think this might actually be the mountain. It's the idea is that since cav is falling apart, you have mountains flying through the air and stuff. So they're kind of playing around with the idea that like on cav that everything would always be vertical because the planet's crumbling apart. So you can have mountains like this, which creates a very interesting landscape as opposed to like the typical like straight up like just triangular mountain. And I believe we do get like allusions to like mountains colliding with stuff in some of the Edge of Eternities story. Once again, art by Adam Paquette. So here we have what's a Vendo. I do love like the rain here because I'm not sure if it's actually rain. It could just be like ice melting. Like this could all just be like ice just melting and falling down from like the treetops and stuff. It could also just be rain. Um, Once again, a ton of green. We have E median, so you know it's on a Vendo, and that's their green aligned. Um, I think green mainly gets forests because the forests tend to have a connection with associated with like, nature, like natural life. I think. Um, and as I mentioned this previously, but calling green the nature color is a bit like simplistic sometimes because green is more about accepting the world for as it is. It's growth through acceptance, which can mean accepting like certain like for example, if you see a beaver building a dam, um, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like an artificial thing. You wouldn't go like beavers must be exterminated because they're artificially changing the world. Like most green line people would agree that's a natural occurrence. So in the same way, you can have like green aligned people who are okay with technology or view technology as a natural extension of the world or something that can exist in harmony with nature. Everyone has this idea that like a lot of people have this idea that green's like this like basically if you're not like bear bark, I'm Gruul as in like the Gruul clans. If you're not like just destroying every machine you see and living with like eating like a paleo diet, and you're not green. But that's not true. That can be green, but that's not like every instance of green philosophy. Green can be very like okay with cities and stuff and technology as long as it's like in harmony with nature or puts nature first. Once again, Adam Paquette's the artist. Also, I like the trail here. I always like the trails for all the ships they're putting here. And once again, as we get closer to as we get close, it becomes like more green and lush as it gets closer to the camera. But as it gets farther away, it's more blue because probably a bit of the atmosphere, but also because like the ice and the rain and stuff. Plains. I mean, I don't really have a ton to say about like I can't really have stuff to say about these lands. Plains. We're really hyped. This is a day game once again. We're really hyped with the atmosphere because we can see the curve of the planet. I do love like the sense of like action going on here with both the, like the ship flying, but also like the wind. Like these clouds are being like definitely being pushed by something, so it's very windy. Conveys that extremely well. The art's by Elena Dana. Also, once again, the gold and the white because it's a white. It produces white mana. Has Elena Dana done anything? Oh, she did Animal Sanctuary. Man, she's been at it for a while, man. Broadside Lion, Branch of Itukazi. Oh, this one's interesting. This could be a Diggy. It's kind of hard to tell. It could be a Diggy from a distance, but like stylized. A lot of gold and white, obviously. It could just be a planet, and then we have like the cosmic clouds. Everything's pointing to this planet here because like everything's coming out from this planet, so your eyes are drawn to here, and it's also like shining. Like there's like it's basically like a target on this planet. Here we have an island. This is clearly Uthros. We have something falling into Uthros. I assume that's probably like an Elvoy ship entering atmosphere and heating up. Um, Kind of crazy for like a card like this because the other land cards so far have looked relatively peaceful. I mean, the basic land cards have looked peaceful. Like the planes is like you just have a Vendo. Like the Vendo is just like people flying. But here's like someone entering atmosphere who looks like they could just be crashing, but it could also just be how they enter the atmosphere. Also, once again, ton of blue, ton of clouds, a lot of like water. Like blue also gets a lot of clouds because like clouds are made of water and they have a connection to air. And this is like a very striking like piece. I'll break up the piece. Sergei Glushkov. So you can definitely tell it's made by different artists, not just because of the style, but because how they handle the composition. Like because Sergei elects to basically like where some of the other art aims to be more peaceful, Sergei elects to break it up by putting like a bit of action in there, which like has a little bit of like red and purple for contrast to the blue. Once again, an island. This is like more obviously. I think once again more symbolic. I don't know. I don't know. This is Earth from a distance, but it could also just be a bunch of stars and stuff, and an implied planet somewhere that could be an island. Blue. It looks like this shape looks like it could be like an Elfway head of some sort. I'm not 100% sure. It could just be just a shape that they picked, where this is sort of like rippling. Like it was like this bright light, and then like this sort of rippling effect going outwards, and then something like pouring down that resembles kind of water. Like it sort of like looks like an island from a distance. I guess maybe I'm not really sure, but um, is that Liga with two eyes or like Luga? Liga Smelskane. Again, uh, Magic Gathering artist hitter. He's in like a lot of stuff. Swamp. So once again, you can tell this is also by Sergei just by the fact that it has the same sort of like that has once again depicts a ship entering the atmosphere and heating up, like being fiery, which helps break up the composition a bit. Once again, it looks like they could be crashing because of these little bits like falling off here, but I can't really tell. But swamp, um, this is Suster Secundi being depicted. Here you have some stuff being dragged into the Super Void, I assume, which is very like incredible depiction up by Sergey here, just showing like the scale of at which it's happening, and then like all these symbols down here. And once again, a lot of purple and black, just because so it's a black line card. Swamp. This looks a little scary. This looks kind of like a face actually. Like these look like teeth and like two eyes, and like a skull. So maybe it's meant to represent the mana symbol a little bit, but also like black is a color that's one of the more likely ones leans like fear to like scare you away or to do something. And this could also be like a floor of some sort. So this could be the swamp, like the base of a swamp of a stylized swamp within like the stars or something. The use most kind. Once again, there's like it's interesting. It's interesting. There is like once again like just like a little bit of yellow highlight here to contrast the purple. I'm telling you, purple and yellow people use that a lot. I'm not even sure they always realize it. Mountain. If my game, oh, well, I don't want to save you. Mountain, Navarone falling apart. Once again, you can tell, but we can tell which one's by Sergei just because they draw they always have a ship flying into the atmosphere, burning up, which is a nice depiction of like how entering atmosphere would probably like a ship look. And we have Cav falling apart, and of course it's red and fiery and looks very brutal here. Mountain. I assume this is Cav again, but it's a little hard to tell. There's like stuff floating, which is probably Cav, but also Cav looks a little bit more like lit up than this usually, and I'm not sure like if Cav usually just has stuff just hovering like this and like dropping lava down. Like usually Cav is stuff flying through the air more like. But this art's by Julian Koch Jun Wayne. And we have of course lava and fire and mountains. So you know it's a mountain and red connections like fire and stuff and rock. I love like these little like shooting stars, maybe even ships up here. Very nice. Forest. Once again, I think it's meant to be more symbolic or like metaphorical representation of a forest, where we have like these space clouds that look like they could be some sort of like maybe undergrowth or some sort of like shape like that, and also some Eumedian ships like flying here. So green, obviously, tons of green, etc. Sergei Glushikov. Um, so here we have a first one. Is this by okay? This is not by Sergei because there is a ship entering the atmosphere, but it's not like done in the same style. By Julian Koch Jun Wen once again. I do love once again how massive like the ice is here. The equator looks like a bit like the terraform creator looks like a little bit smaller than it is in other depictions, but this could just be at a different point in time, most likely. I also do like the ripple effect as the ship enters like the atmosphere, like it's like so powerful, it's like knocking the clouds aside, which again looks like it's crash landing because I know like spaceships will generally heat up if they enter the atmosphere, but you're going that fast, it's close to the planet. I'm a little bit worried. So green. This ice is set to like slightly green, I think, just barely, just saying it's like a green card. I think that's all. I kind of sped up near the lands there because I just didn't have enough to say, and I didn't really want to sit there trying to force me to say something like deep about like the basic land here. Artillery blast. How long have I been streaming? I don't know what I'm just learning about the bit right now. We're gonna pray that is made that the VOD is not absolute fucking shit there. Um. Oh fucking whoops. If it's laggy, I'm sorry for anybody watching this. If it isn't, fuck you. I'm better. So anyway, that's enough for me for today. I'm gonna stop. Next time I'll probably talk about one of the Magic the Gathering articles. Tomorrow I'm gonna try playing one of my games. I keep saying I want to do that. This time I'll try to actually play something, literally anything. I think the problem is I'm just trying too hard to like keep up with my promise. I'll play something tomorrow. At around 2. Anyway, I'll see you guys later.